Prepare yourself for a deep dive into the shadows of global perception. In this riveting video, we unveil the top 10 most hated countries in the world in 2024. What drives nations to the brink of universal disdain, from political turmoil to economic woes, and from social unrest to staggering cost of living, we explore the complex web of factors that have earned these countries their notorious reputations. Join us on this journey of discovery as we reveal the stories behind the statistics and uncover the truths that fuel worldwide animosity. Buckle up, and let's embark on this eye-opening exploration together. In a world where nations strive for harmony and understanding, the concept of hate towards certain countries might seem out of place. Yet, it's a reality that some countries are viewed less favorably on the global stage due to various reasons such as political decisions, historical conflicts, or cultural misunderstandings. These perceptions can lead to a complex mix of emotions and attitudes from the international community, influencing everything from diplomatic relations to how citizens of these nations are treated abroad. Even as we look at the 10 most hated countries in 2024, it's important to remember that the countries mentioned here have found themselves under the critical eye of the world for different reasons. Some face backlash for their government policies, while others are tangled in long-standing geopolitical disputes. This list isn't just about pointing fingers, but understanding the deeper issues that lead to such strong global sentiments. Here are the 10 most hated countries in 2024. Before we begin, please like this video so we can bring more videos for you. Number 2. India. First up, let's chat about India. Known for its vibrant culture, diverse landscapes, and rich history, India also faces its share of international criticism. One major aspect that often puts India in the global spotlight, unfortunately in a negative light, is its geopolitical tensions. The relationship between India and Pakistan is notably strained, primarily due to long-standing disputes such as the one over Kashmir. This conflict has not only affected regional stability, but also how other countries perceive India. Also, internal issues such as social inequalities, religious strife, and human rights concerns paint a complex picture. For instance, the international media, including big names like BBC and CNN, sometimes portray India as grappling with severe issues of poverty and extremism. While this might not represent the everyday reality for all Indians, the portrayal sticks and can skew global perceptions. Interestingly, despite these challenges, India is not just viewed through a single lens. It's fascinating to note that India's soft power, driven by Bollywood and its historical non-alignment policy in global politics, garners both admiration and goodwill internationally. Yet, the dichotomy of respect versus disdain remains a central theme in understanding why India might be disliked on various global platforms. Pakistan. Moving westward from India, Pakistan shares some thematic elements in its story of global perception. Often in the news for political instability, economic challenges, and security issues, Pakistan's international image is complicated. One striking point of contention is the alleged involvement of certain groups within Pakistan in global terrorism. This accusation alone significantly tarnishes the nation's image abroad, contributing heavily to its appearance on lists of disliked. Societal issues within Pakistan also contribute to the hate they get. The treatment of women and minority groups, for instance, often comes under scrutiny. Reports of human rights violations can lead to international backlash, affecting how both allies and adversaries view the country. It's also worth mentioning the diaspora effect. Pakistanis abroad are sometimes stereotyped based on the actions of a few, influencing perceptions back home. In places like the UK, certain criminal activities linked to Pakistani individuals have led to broader generalizations and negativity towards Pakistan as a whole. Despite these adversities, it's crucial to recognize the cultural richness and the genuine warmth of many Pakistani people, which doesn't always make the headlines. The country's natural beauty and hospitality are often overshadowed by the heavier, darker headlines it garners. Israel. If countries were high school students, Israel would be the one everyone's always whispering about. Founded in 1948, right after World War II, this country has been at the center of geopolitical drama more times than most of us can count. But why the fuss? Well, for starters, Israel finds itself in the middle of a region that's had its fair share of tension. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which has roots reaching back to the early 20th century, is a major source of the heat Israel gets. The conflict began with the rise of Zionism and Arab nationalism, leading to decades of strife over land and sovereignty. Fast forward to 2023, and things haven't cooled down. Reports indicate that Israeli forces have been involved in actions in Gaza and the West Bank that some international observers label as war crimes. The term ethnic cleansing even pops up in discussions, painting a grim picture of the situation. On the flip side, groups like Hamas aren't playing nice either, with their own share of alleged atrocities. It's a messy, heart-wrenching cycle of action and reaction. Travel restrictions. But wait, there's more fuel to the fire. Israel's international airport might as well have a do not enter sign for citizens of 22 countries that ban direct flights and overflights to and from Israel. These include nations like Iran, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia, just to name a few. And if you think that's complex, you need to also know that a whopping 28 unmember states don't even recognize Israel as a country. Imagine being that one kid in class who half the room pretends doesn't exist. Tough. Iraq is a country that's been through the ringer and back. Known as the cradle of civilization, modern-day Iraq sits on land once home to the mighty Babylonian and Assyrian empires. But recent history hasn't been kind to this storied nation. Since the US-led invasion in 2003, which toppled Saddam Hussein, Iraq has been grappling with instability, terrorism, and political upheaval. The emergence of ISIS in 2014 didn't help matters, turning large swaths of the country into battlegrounds and displacing millions of people. The violence has had devastating effects on public perception. Images of war and suffering broadcast around the world have painted Iraq in a negative light. It's a classic case of bad news traveling fast and sticking hard. But it's not just the internal chaos that's caused Iraq's reputation to tank. The country also faces criticism for its human rights record, including issues like freedom of expression and the treatment of minority groups. These are big red flags for the global community, which values, at least on paper, the ideals of democracy and human rights. Number 6. Iran's political landscape has been a major red flag for many around the world. The country is essentially governed by a theocracy, where the supreme leader holds significant power over all state affairs, overshadowing even the elected president. This concentration of power has led to numerous human rights abuses, which have been documented and criticized internationally. Arbitrary detentions, unfair trials, and the suppression of freedom of speech are rampant. For instance, if someone criticizes the government, they could end up in prison without a fair trial, and sometimes confessions are extracted through torture. Then there's the issue of Iran's aggressive foreign policy. Iran has been accused of supporting terrorist organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas. This involvement in armed conflicts across the region not only destabilizes the Middle East, but also strains Iran's relations with many Western countries, who see this support as a direct threat to global peace. Iran's stance on social issues also adds another layer to its negative image. The legal system in Iran includes harsh penalties for actions that many other countries consider personal choices, such as consuming alcohol or engaging in same-sex relationships. Women's rights are particularly restricted. For example, women are required to wear hijabs, and there have been numerous protests against this law, which have been met with severe governmental pushback. North Korea. Now let's talk about North Korea, another country that frequently appears on lists of the most hated nations. Life in North Korea is incredibly tough, largely due to its authoritarian regime led by Kim Jong-un. The government exercises extreme control over every aspect of life, including the media, religion, and even the private lives of its citizens. There is virtually no freedom of speech, and dissent against the government is met with brutal consequences, including imprisonment or execution. North Korea's human rights record is appalling. Numerous reports from defectors and international organizations describe horrific conditions in labor camps, where prisoners, including children, are subjected to forced labor, torture, and starvation. The government also maintains strict control over information, with citizens having almost no access to the outside world. This isolation helps the regime maintain power, but leaves the population impoverished and underinformed. Economically, North Korea is in dire straits. The focus on military spending has left little for the welfare of its people, leading to widespread poverty and famine. The country's nuclear ambitions have led to severe sanctions from the international community, further crippling its economy. Both Iran and North Korea share a common feature: their significant disconnect between the government and the people's interests. While the leadership in both countries pursues policies that consolidate their power and provoke international outrage, the general populace suffers the consequences of economic isolation and repressive social controls. Number 4, Saudi Arabia. This country is like that rich uncle who has an impressive coin collection, but never really tells you where all the coins come from. In 2022 alone, Saudi Arabia executed 196 people. It's a staggering number that puts them high up on the list of countries using capital punishment. And it's not just about the numbers. The reasons behind these executions can be as vague as witchcraft accusations. Ever heard of the term unfair trials? Well, Saudi Arabia could potentially be its poster child. There are lots of reports about detainees being coerced into confessions through torture. Not exactly what you'd expect from a place that hosts millions of peaceful pilgrims every year, right? And if you're a migrant worker, the situation isn't any rosier. Many workers flock to the kingdom, hoping for better opportunities, but find themselves in less than ideal working conditions. There are long hours, low pay, and sometimes a complete disregard for their basic human rights. Now let's talk about freedom of speech, or rather the lack of it. Criticizing the government can land you in serious trouble. We're talking long prison sentences. In recent years, even social media isn't safe. Tweet the wrong thing, and you might just catch the attention of the authorities. United States. The United States is known as the land of the free, but it has its own share of issues that cause a lot of global discontent. First off, the US has a bit of a reputation for playing world police. Whether it's military interventions or political meddling, Uncle Sam has his fingers in many pies, and not everyone's thrilled about it. Then there's the gun debate. The US has an incredibly high rate of gun ownership, and with it comes a staggering number of gun-related deaths. It's a polarizing issue that divides the nation and confuses much of the world. Economic inequality is another hot-button issue. The gap between the rich and the poor is vast and growing. While Silicon Valley billionaires are building rockets to Mars, there are people struggling to make ends meet. This stark contrast paints a picture of a country of great wealth, but also of significant disparity. And how can we forget the culture wars? Issues like abortion, gender rights, and racial equality are fiercely debated. Sometimes it feels like for every step forward, there's a backlash that pushes 2 steps back. Russia is massive, spanning 9 time zones and boasting a rich history and culture. Yet it finds itself grappling with a severely tarnished image internationally. Why, you ask? Well, let's break it down. For starters, Russia's political landscape is dominated by a figure who's been at the helm for what seems like forever. Vladimir Putin. Under his rule, the country has taken a highly authoritarian turn. The government exerts a tight grip on almost every aspect of life, from media to political opposition. Speaking of media, independent journalism is a high-risk career in Russia. There's significant pressure to conform to the official line, especially concerning sensitive topics like the conflict with Ukraine or any criticism of Putin himself. Then there's public opinion abroad. Surveys and polls consistently show that Russia is viewed unfavorably by a large majority in numerous countries. For instance, a Pew Research Center survey revealed that an average of 82 across 24 countries harbors an unfavorable view of Russia. This negative perception is further worsened by Russia's military actions, such as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, which has drawn global condemnation and resulted in severe economic sanctions. There are also a lot of domestic issues the Russian populace deals with: high levels of corruption, a stifled political environment, and significant restrictions on personal freedoms. These internal problems spill over into how the country is perceived globally, painting a picture of a nation where dissent is not tolerated and freedom is curtailed. Number 1. China. While China is yet another giant on the global stage, it finds itself embroiled in controversy. It is so embroiled that it takes its place on our list as the most hated country on planet. China's rise as an economic powerhouse has been nothing short of meteoric. But this growth has come with its own set of challenges and criticisms. Human rights are a major issue. The situation in Xinjiang with the Uyghur population has drawn severe international criticism. with allegations of forced labor and re-education camps making headlines. Then there's Hong Kong, where the imposition of the national security law has smothered autonomy and freedoms, leading to widespread protests and international backlash. China's approach to information control is also noteworthy. The Great Firewall of China is perhaps the most sophisticated internet censorship mechanism in the world, controlling what over 1 billion people can see, do, and say online. This control extends beyond its borders too, with the Chinese government accused of conducting extensive surveillance and espionage operations globally. Internationally, China's aggressive foreign policy, particularly in the South China Sea, has strained its relations with neighboring countries and others like the USA. Its wolf warrior diplomacy, characterized by a combative and unapologetic defense of its national interests and policies, hasn't helped in softening its image either. Economically, while China is seen as a vital trading partner, its trade practices have often been described as unfair or predatory, further complicating its international relationships. The COVID-19 pandemic originating in Wuhan and the subsequent handling and transparency issues have also dented China's global standing significantly. Understanding why certain countries are viewed unfavorably on the global stage offers us valuable insights into the complexities of international relations and human perception. From geopolitical conflicts to internal societal issues, the reasons behind these negative perceptions are multifaceted and often rooted in deep historical contexts. One key lesson is the importance of diplomacy and open communication. Countries that actively engage in dialogue and work towards resolving conflicts tend to improve their international image over time. Another takeaway is the significant impact of media representation. How a country is portrayed in the global media can shape public opinion and influence diplomatic relations. It's crucial for nations to manage their image proactively and address any misinformation that might arise. Lastly, this list reminds us of the importance of cultural exchange and mutual understanding. By fostering positive interactions between different cultures, we can reduce prejudice and build a more harmonious global community. As individuals, we can contribute to this effort by educating ourselves about different countries and their unique challenges, striving to view them with empathy and an open mind. While there are a lot of reasons why countries have landed on such a stark list, it's crucial to approach the topic with a sense of empathy and insight. Understanding the roots of global disdain can help pave the way for better international relationships and hopefully a more cooperative future. Remember, the world is filled with so many nations, each with its own story and struggles, and every country has both its shadows and its light. If you enjoyed this video, let us know in the comment section down below and turn on your notifications to know when next we see you in our next video. Bye!